Well, thanks so much for having me here today. And I think this must be the most international audience that I've ever presented in front of. I think we have a few hundred folks who've signed up from Australia and New Zealand, about 100 folks here in the US, and a few hundred folks in Europe. So truly kind of like spread out audience. So very much looking forward to the presentation today. And as you said, I'm going to be talking about how we can go from the so-called post and pray method of posting job postings on a job board and then getting on your knees and praying and hoping that you'll end up with more candidates, to a few more evidence-based methods on how to attract workers. And also looking forward for Mark's demo on how JobAdder's platform can help with that. Now, where I'd like to start is with a brief overview of the current worker shortage and how bad it really is and where we can expect to see things going. I get this question a lot from various leaders where they're following different trends in the economy, and I get the question like, well, now that the kind of like the extra benefit checks from the government are going to be smaller, can we expect more workers to go back into the job force and therefore avoid the current worker shortages that we have been seeing? And if you look at the numbers, you can see that the number of unfilled jobs are at a historical high. This number has been fluctuating somewhere between 3 and 6 million open roles in the US economy, going back all the way 20 years till around 2017 somewhere. Then after that, it started slowly climbing. And now for the first time, it's at about 10 million open jobs. This is a pretty remarkable increase. And my estimate or guess, if you will, here is that you're not going to see the number of unfilled jobs going down very quickly. It's going to take a really long time. There are a number of reasons for that, and I'm going to get into those details one by one briefly. But one of the main reasons is that recruiters today are asked to fill up a leaking bucket. What I mean by that is that at the very top of this bucket, you're trying to find new candidates to join your firm while you have a leaking bucket, meaning that there are more and more workers resigning from their jobs. If you just look at the trend in the last year, you can see that there's been a 38% increase in the number of people resigning from their jobs on their own. And in any setting, when you're kind of like working with an environment like that, it's very difficult to catch up, let alone kind of like fill up all these roles, the 10 million plus roles that have been open now. But you also have a number of other factors driving this, that it's not a one single factor, which makes it harder to solve. You do have some folks who have genuine fears about COVID and how it's going to impact their health or health of close ones that they interact with. You have the vaccine mandates that are being rolled out, and right now we're seeing a little bit of a standoff between various employers and employee groups. On one end, you have some unions that are demanding that employers should require vaccines for everyone. And on the other end, you have folks saying that, well, if you're requiring me to be vaccinated, I might not come to work. And we'll see how this plays out over the next few months, but I do believe that we are going to lose a few more workers because of this in certain locations. you do have a lot of folks who've relocated during COVID, not because they found a new job, but because of personal reasons. They might have had a family house somewhere or a personal house somewhere. And when COVID hit, they felt like it was better for their lifestyle to move to that place. And historically, research has shown that one of the biggest factors that drives unemployment is when there is a disparity between the available talent geographically and available jobs. Even if there is a lot of available talent in the same city as there are available jobs, but there is a disparity between where they are located a few miles apart, that tends to create unemployment. So when people are relocating because of lifestyle reasons and not to the job specifically, that will create some unemployment. There was an interesting article a few weeks ago, I believe it was in the Wall Street Journal, about the rise of households when one spouse can work remotely but not the other one. And when that happens, you're seeing more of these couples that are living apart and more of these couples that are thinking, well, we don't want to live apart. And oftentimes, you're going to see one of them compromising about their job and moving to another person, and you're going to lose more workers because of that. Of course, you also have folks who are reevaluating their life priorities and thinking that they don't want to stick to the career ladder that they're used to, and resigning from their jobs that way. Number 6 is more around how values are changing in our society. And if you're seeing at the kind of like looking at the job participation rate in the last 10 to 20 years, the percentage of the population who's participating in the job force has been steadily declining. And part of that is that less folks feel like they need to have a career in order to feel fulfilled. And that is going on right now as well, where particularly in the younger population, a lot of folks who were on the periphery participating in the workforce no longer feel like they have to do that in order to achieve kind of like their life goals or social status, and they don't need to work in order to kind of like make it by, not at least full time. You have a lot of households who have increased their savings during the pandemic because they had less vacation costs, eating out costs, etc. And they're now using those savings to live off those instead. Of course, you have folks who want to completely change their careers and are taking a break either to go back and get some education or just see if they can land a job that is more satisfying to them. Number 9 is that a lot of organizations that would like to hire more folks are having difficulties doing so because they don't have enough recruiters on hand. Number 10 is that even used cars are getting more expensive now because of all the chip shortages, etc., that have led to fewer new cars being produced. And when a used car is more expensive, guess what? It just got more expensive to get to work for a lot of people. Then you have folks retiring early. And of course, all this pressure on the current workforce is leading to increased burnout. Now, the reason I took all that time to go through all these 12 reasons that I've listed here is to accentuate the point that it's not one single factor leading to the worker shortage. So it's also not going to be one simple solution like reducing the government benefits for COVID relief pays that will get people to go back to work. And if we now switch the focus on how can you increase the number of job applicants and fill more of those seats, well, success in talent acquisition relies on many components. So the question is, where do you start? I'm going to walk you through a specific case that we did in the last few months for one of our clients. This is with one of the companies that I've invested in called Talent Compass, and they provide this type of a service utilizing technology like the one provided by JobAdder. And the first thing you could do is to start by understanding your hiring funnel. You can map out your existing hiring funnel, And this is what we did at Talent Compass, where we said, broadly speaking, you want to see where are you getting your candidate interest from? How are you initially screening candidates? How are you interviewing them? How's the hiring decision done? And how is the candidate deciding about the role or not? And at the very top of the funnel, you want to kind of like understand which of our candidate sources are most cost effective. Are we rejecting the right candidates at the middle of the funnel? And at the bottom of the funnel, are the right candidates choosing us? So at the very top of the funnel, to bring this example a little bit more to life, what we did is to take a look at where are you really getting your candidates, most of the candidates. And this one company we worked with at Talent Compass, they were utilizing 8 different job boards. So what we did is to do a A/B test of these 8 different job boards across 50 different locations for the same time period here in the US. And what you can see on the right-hand side is that one of these job boards vastly outperformed other ones, and then there were 2 that were also performing fairly well. And fairly quickly, we were able to refocus the resources on the most effective job boards, and we're able to increase the qualified job board applicants by over 300%. Now, it might seem a little bit tedious and difficult to do an A/B test like that, but the alternative is that you keep doing the same thing and expect different results, and that also is not very effective. The next step is around testing screening hypotheses, your old screening hypothesis, to see if they're really effective. What you want to see is, are we rejecting the right candidates? Now, this one company that we worked with, they were using a standardized sales aptitude assessment to screen out applicants. And they had been using this assessment for over 10 years, and they had screened out thousands of candidates, and they had screened in thousands of candidates based on this test. And what you're seeing here is that on the y-axis, you're seeing the percentage of their sales quota that these hires had hit. And here on the x-axis, what you're seeing is if the test had recommended them to be hired, not recommended to hire, or highly recommended to hire. And as you can see, there's a negative correlation between the score on the test and how well these salespeople perform. So the people who were not recommended to be hired were hitting a higher percentage of their sales quota than those that being recommended and highly recommended. Now, there might be a number of reasons for that, but regardless of the reasons, suffices to say that this assessment was not effective, and they were screening in and out thousands of candidates for not very valid reasons. And by eliminating this assessment, we were able to increase the candidate pool, of course, but also then develop an assessment based on their data that was more validated and was actually predicting on the job's success. Now, the other thing you can do is to hire more for what a candidate can do, not for what they've done. One of the biggest mistakes I see in recruiting is that hiring managers overly focus on people who have past experience doing exactly what they're looking to do. Now, that might seem a little bit counterintuitive to ignore that past experience or not weigh it as strongly. But here's an example that will show you why that's important to test it in your current setting. This company that we worked with, they were recruiting for an inside sales position. And when we talked to various hiring managers and asked them why they were focusing on hiring for just people with inside sales experience, they would come up with various anecdotes and saying like, well, 3 years ago, I hired these 2 folks who used to be outside sales reps, and they lasted 2 months in the job. They got bored about sitting on the phone and quit their roles. So, okay, well, let's pull the data from the last few years on everyone you've hired, not just these 2 sales reps that you can remember. And when we did that, we were able to show them that people with inside sales experience were on average hitting about 60% of their quota within a year. But people with outside sales experience and no prior inside sales experience were exceeding their quota by hitting a little bit over 100% of their sales quota within a year. And that remarkable difference helped our client broaden their talent pool quite a bit. So taking a look at your hiring profile can be very helpful, and more hiring for what they can do, not only for what they've done. And then currently, when you're getting to the offer stage, if you're seeing a number of your offers being rejected, it's important to take a look at why people are rejecting your offers. Listening to candidates can be helpful, but then also looking for what they're not telling you. Where in this instance, this is data from one of the job aggregators that we're working with, job board aggregators that we're working with. And their data shows that when the recruiter reached out to a prospective hire, within a day of the application, 69% of applicants accepted their job offer who made it to the job offer stage. But when they waited as long as 1 to 3 days to reach out to this person, only 13% of those who received an offer accepted it. And then when they waited 3 to 7 days, only 5% of them accepted it. Now, this is data based on over 1 million applicants. I should say that this is more for lower salaried positions, so this might not apply to your setting. But looking at these simple behaviors and paying attention to the candidate experience can make quite a big of a difference. And there is this saying that time kills all deals. And I've certainly seen it being true in recruiting as well. That's why you're seeing companies like UPS now skipping the job interview altogether for a lot of their positions and having people fill out a 10-minute application online and receiving an offer right there, unless there are some red flags on their application. The final thing I want to leave you with, piece of advice I want to leave you with, is there are key questions you can ask regarding your hiring strategy to improve your results is taking a look at how much better talent is really worth to you and your organization. Taking a step away from all the rule of thumbs in terms of like how much have I paid for our talent traditionally, how much is our competitor paying for it, etc., but looking at how much is this talent worth to our organization. If we had more workers, what revenue targets could we hit? What profitability targets could we hit? And then trying to understand how much of that you're willing to spend on better hiring practices, paying more for better talent, or getting more value from the talent that you have. And once you've done that, a litmus test for you can be, well, if you're not willing to spend a percentage of that on getting better talent, more talent, or keeping your better talent, you probably are not believing in your own numbers. So go back to doing this exercise till you are willing to invest something in improving your talent outcomes. And that's how you could start the journey there. I'm going to pause there and hand over to Mark for a demo from his side, and then also come back to answering any questions that you might have. Thanks very much for the time.
Okay, perfect. Over to you, Mark.
Oh, thank you. So welcome, everyone. My name is Mark. I'm a senior account executive with JobAdder. I just want to compliment Atta on his fantastic presentation and piggyback off it a little bit and share how we can help with JobAdder. So in terms of an agenda today, I just wanted to give an overview of JobAdder and where we sit in the market, share a little bit about the current state of play, and also share some JobAdder stats. And then within the recruitment lifecycle, focus on 3 key areas. So first and foremost, a little bit about JobAdder. So we have 4,000 customers globally, They're all on a month-to-month solution. I don't know, be that genius or insanity from the business, but it's a nice little shoe in the behind that needs to keep us honest, and we have to continuously keep evolving, because it's very, very easy to leave the platform if it's not delivering. More companies use us than any other in the ANZ region, and we have a ridiculously high client satisfaction rate. I think that's up to 99.1, 99.2, but that very much ties into the fact that we are month to month. We're backed by Seek, so we're not going anywhere anytime soon, and next year will be 15 years in operation, and as I mentioned, we are a global business. Just, I suppose, a snapshot into where or how we support. So everything through from the requisition process, approvals, selection, shortlisting, interviews, through to onboarding, where we have the e-signature components, and how we can analyze your business from reporting and data analytics, where you can benchmark and see where improvements can potentially be made. But for today's session, I just wanted to focus on 3 key areas: sourcing, screening, and selection. So firstly, just wanted to kind of outline the state of play, and I'm going to be very much focused on the ANZ region here. But what we can see is there's a huge talent shortage. It's never been better to be a candidate than it is today. So we have unemployment at record lows here. It's at 4.9%, down from 5.1. There's a number of factors that we have to consider: closed borders, less travels, shortage in skilled migrants. And that kind of leans on to the fact that, we used to invite like over 100,000 skilled migrants into the country every single year. We haven't had that. So we're looking at 68% of tech employers say this is going to impact the effectiveness of their organization moving forward. 76 were in mining, 73 in banking, and 72 in the human resources sector. Focusing then on, I suppose, adverts. We're at record highs in terms of adverts, and despite what many prospects say, it's not the job ads or job boards' fault. It's not working. It's a little bit deeper than that. For instance, in March of this year, Seek saw its highest number of job adverts posted on its platform in its 23-year history. Coupled with that, it's the lowest number of applicants applying for positions since 2012. Focusing a little bit more on Australia, if we look at this same time, Q2 of 2020, we're average ratio of about 51:9, whereas steadily decreased now to 18:8 in Q2 of 21. And obviously the Great Resignation, we can't seem to get away from it now, but the survey over 30,000 global workers, I should say, sorry, and that 41% will be looking to find new work. As well with that, we're finding that high caliber candidates are spending less than 10 days on the market, and even less than that if they're being headhunted. So how that looks with our data. So we're able to get aggregated data from our kind of large client base. So you can see here in terms of, we're looking at Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So Q3 of last year in comparison to Q3 of this year. So the UK, we can see that jobs orders per accounts was somewhere sitting kind of 8 to 9, and that in 12 months has increased up to 25. Similar kind of, not as dramatic increases, but similar trends in Australia and also in New Zealand as well. So I suppose the areas that I wanted to focus on with JobAdder is kind of first and foremost the placement sources. So utilization of your existing database, searching and screening. We have a really interesting case study from a company called Blue Cross that once they sign on with JobAdder, they reduced their advertising spend by 65%. But you can see stats here from across the US, UK, New Zealand, and Australia. Those clients that utilized their existing database had a significantly less time to hire, time to place, than those that used external sources. So with this, what we wanted to be able to do is the ability to easily find and search for talent really quickly and engage with them effectively. We want to ensure that your TAs and recruiters are spending their high value time on activities such as speaking with candidates, as opposed to getting bogged down manually reviewing resumes, focusing, not having the searching criteria that we have here, resume keyword search based in a certain location, certain tickets, license. We need more powerful searching capability, which we have within the system itself. And also the engagement or the interaction that your organization, your colleagues have had with a particular candidate in the past. You know, do they have a certain license or tickets? What's been the interaction? Have they interviewed for you multiple times in the past? What kind of shift availability? Things of that nature. If we find then that perhaps we're not getting the results that we want from our existing database, in a lot of cases, we need to look at other sources. So, for instance, if we're going to release this particular position to, say, your careers page or maybe a job board. So just want to kind of talk about a really quick win that we have within JobAdder. So you kind of have to ask yourself, I suppose, how easy is it to apply for a job? You know, is it simply an email address that's sitting there? Do you even have a careers page? How difficult is it to apply for a position with your company? As it shows, 95% of candidates who click on a job don't actually follow through with that. You know, we need to ensure that your website is mobile responsive, because we're finding that over 90% are using mobile now to find that dream job. So with the JobAdder system, it's a case where we don't have a username or password, because we find that a lot of candidates, a lot of people in general, just have password and username fatigue at this stage. I've applied for jobs in the past that you create a username, password, and then you have 2, 3, 5 pages of questions that actually already are answered within your resume itself. So we have that shopping cart abandonment that you get to page 2 and you think, oh, this is too difficult, too hard basket, so you just sack it off and you don't follow through with the process. So also as well, that this is a standard, if you like, application form, candidate application form. But what we can easily do is, these are the key pieces of information we need, but we want to, I suppose, educate the client that, you know, we're looking to show between, or ask between 3 to 5 questions, which are ideal for a candidate. Anything less than 3, the searching capability is not that powerful. Any more than 5, you have that that process where they might just not continue on with it. So essentially, kind of, it's a case where we want to leave the bar for entry as low as possible in terms of application process. And then once we get the buy-in or engagement from that particular candidate, we've shortlisted them, that we've told them about the opportunity with our organization, then we leave it open to collect that additional information. And this is where, I suppose, our candidate engagement comes into place. So as we said, we're leaving the bar for entry as low as possible, but we don't have that additional information that we do require. What I'm showing here is, we call it Formatter, but it's a digital form. What it is, you can configure whatever types of information, questions, queries that you have from the candidate, and it's very easy to interact with the candidates. This can be sent, this can sit on your website. You can send it out via email, SMS. It's mobile responsive. It can be bulk sent as well, because we know that the open rate of an email currently sits at 24-25%. You're looking at the high 80s in terms of an SMS. 87, 88, and this can all be sent from the system, where it's all tracked and clearly visible. We also know as well that manually entering this type of candidate information into the system costs on average about $11 per applicant of precious recruitment time. If for whatever reason we don't have the required candidates that we want to submit to our client or to our hiring manager, and we want to beef it up a little bit, final area where JobAdder can support is LinkedIn and Seek. You know, when you're thinking about the biggest talent pools in the market, you can't look past LinkedIn and Seek. Love them or loathe them, you can't really get away from them. If you are exploring opportunities, if you're out there in the market, there's a high probability you'll update your profile in one, if not both. So just to focus, I suppose, on maybe Seek. So we're looking at a labor, total labor force in Australia of about 12.6 million. Over 10 million of them have both LinkedIn and Seek profiles, and regularly updating on a monthly basis. So we listen to our clients in terms of where they were sourcing profiles from, and built this integration with both systems. It's exclusive with Seek. The interesting data, and especially with the candidate shortage in Australia in particular at the moment, is that with Seek, the data that we've received from them is, we're looking at 30% of the market are really happy in their role. They're lifers. They're there for the long haul. So that leaves quite a chunky 70% of the market that are active and monitoring. Breaking that down, 32% are active and actually, seeking or applying for positions. So it leaves quite a chunky 38% that are passive and monitoring. And the benefit of the system is that because they'll more than likely have a Seek profile, if they are engaging or they're checking out different positions but not pulling the trigger and applying for those roles, the AI within the system will flag it. So when you are looking for particular profiles, it'll pop it up so that they're a lot more likely to engage with you and be open to a conversation, which is really, really powerful. They said that was kind of the core reason, that 38% of the market to be able to get into it. They're really happy in their positions, they're doing really well at their jobs, but you have an opportunity potentially that's a lot better than they're getting paid, or a lot more challenging, or a lot more senior, whatever the case may be. With these two systems, you have complete interaction. So say, for instance, if we're interacting with, John Smith within Seek, that interaction is going to be flagged and visible within both JobAdder and Seek. Also, when you update your profile in Seek, it's also going to flag it within JobAdder as well. And talking about LinkedIn, so there's no loss of data. So we have that integration with both systems. It's, we've been in this situation, I'm sure, an ex-recruiter. I was an ex-recruiter, sorry, and I would be headhunting someone on LinkedIn, for instance. I have information stored in there, but the ATS that I was using didn't have that information. So it's just a case of that cross-pollination, in that the information is in both systems. So it's easy to engage candidates from both platforms. The information is going to be tracked and you have complete visibility on where things are up to. It's very easy to add profiles into JobAdder. If they update their profile, for instance, on LinkedIn, it will update in JobAdder also. And it's just going to effectively kind of streamline your recruitment process. So that's pretty much kind of like just a few high-level key areas that I wanted to focus on. If Ant and I've discussed today is of interest, simply, I believe, click on the demo request in the survey that you receive after this webinar, and happy to have a conversation, whether it be about the stats, whether it's something that I've brought up, or discuss some of your recruitment challenges. I'll be happy to reach out. Thank you very much. Oh,
thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. That's wonderful. As Mark said, when you leave the session today, you'll be presented with a survey with a couple of questions. One will allow you to rate today's session. Two, asking for any recommendations you have on topics or even speakers for our future events. This is how we put together amazing events, by suggestions from our audience. So let us know if you have any suggestions. And then the third option is, of course, if you'd like more information from JobAdder or a demo, we can get Mark showing the system to you in no time. So please tick that box. And now it's time for questions. Now I've still got some more books to give away. So if you're going to submit a question for us, I've got a book for you. So let's get started. This one I think is for you, Atta. Hi, currently joining from the Philippines and representing my US employer. My question is, how do we forecast talent for the remainder of the year? Based on our experience for this last quarter of 2021, most talent we find decline offers due to one or two reasons from the list of 12 reasons earlier, especially for those roles that require travel. So people don't want to travel. Also, candidates don't want to make any changes for this season. Any suggestions, Atta?
Am I unmuted now?
Sorry, I muted you.
Yeah. No worries. I'm used to getting muted. This is a great question, and thank you, Mark, for that overview. I did want to loop back to that for a second, and I was not asked to say this, and I'm not getting paid to say this, but I can say that kind of like utilizing a platform like JobAdder is my dream, where if I work with recruiting teams that are utilizing that data-driven approach to understanding their bottlenecks and going back to seeing, okay, how can we make it more convenient for candidates to fill in their application? Where are candidates filling in the application? Is it on their cell phone? Is it on the laptop? Where are we kind of like losing most candidates? Where are we finding our most candidates? Keep doing that, and that's the best thing you could do in order to improve your recruiting results. Now, coming back to the question that Karen asked on behalf of our participant in the Philippines. this is a very important question. And the question is, how can we forecast our talent needs for a few months from now? And I particularly like that question because it brings the mindset to a more kind of like preventative mindset, as opposed to kind of like if you compare it to reactive maintenance, where you wait for something to break down and then you're trying to fix it. Now you're trying to predict that we're going to have these talent needs in a few weeks or few months from now, and you want to address it. One of the things you could look at is historical patterns, and you could see what percentage of your workforce that has been resigning last few months, month over month, and in which direction that is going. That can help you forecast and see, okay, last month 3% of our workforce resigned. The month before that it was 2%. The month before that it was 1%. So it's increasing with 1 percentage point, and unless we stop the trend, we could forecast that it presumably is going to be increasing a little bit more as well. Now I'm simplifying a little bit because you need to get to the underlying reasons for those numbers. Another thing you could look at is historical trends in terms of seasonal effects. If you think that your talent shortages are painful now, just you wait till you get to January. There's going to be a big resignation coming in January, and I can tell all employers are on the call today that you should anticipate that. And this is based on decades of past data, is that a lot of folks wait with switching their jobs in January, and January is where most job switches happen compared to other months.
Okay, thanks for that. Another one for you, Atta. You said to hire for what they can do, not what they've done. How does this align with using competency-based interviewing questions where we are asking for specific examples of what they've done in the past?
Yep. So there are different views on competency-based interviewing. And if I'm getting a little bit more specific, I'd like to look at skills-based interviews, where let's imagine that you want to recruit for a team of basketball players, and your dream is that you want to win the NBA one day. Now, there are a few different ways you could go ahead and select talent. You can look at their past scores or track record, which is great because in basketball you have all those stats. Real life, you very rarely have that in most professions, so you can't use that. You can ask them about, well, tell me about a time when your team won when you guys were playing against the Lakers, or when you were dribbling against LeBron James, and how did you handle that? And that might be a good question. You could also ask them, how would you handle it if you were about to kind of like play against LeBron James, and have them explain that? Or you could just watch them play. That is a skills-based assessment, when you're kind of like observing them play and see how well they do. And the more you can go to more skills-based assessments, as opposed to trying to decipher various competencies and say people who have these competencies are going to be good for this job versus not, the more effective I believe that your hiring process is going to be. And this is supported by a lot of research.
Okay, thank you for that. Here's one for you, Mark. We'll give Atta a rest. I understand that through Seek, I can use the talent search, but not sure where I see the cross data or how to view it.
The cross starter. So my understanding is that, so the integration between Seek and JobAdder is called Seek Talent Connect. So if you just contact your Seek consultant, they should be able to switch that on if it's a case you have that particular package that they're selling or that they have access to. So I hope that answers it, or if there's additional information.
Okay, thanks. Here's another one for Atta. Hi there, I'm recruiting especially for entry-level roles, apprentices, trainees. Do you have any suggestions in particular about recruitment strategies for these kind of candidates?
For entry-level roles, and then you broke off for a second.
Do you have any suggestions in particular about what recruitment strategies they could use for hiring these entry-level roles?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different suggestions I could have. I think my first suggestion is going back to understanding your hiring funnel and developing a hypothesis on where in this funnel that you're having the biggest bottlenecks or leakage points, if you will. A lot of recruiters I work with, they believe that they just need to widen the top of the funnel. That might be correct, but if you're doubling the top of your funnel, but you're losing candidates for reasons that would be easy to fix further down in the funnel, and let's say you're losing half or more of your candidates for those reasons, it would have been more effective for you to focus on those stages of the funnel. Now, based on that, setting that aside for a second, I would say kind of like simplifying the process as much as possible. Go away from your 3-page job description and try to narrow it down to 3/4 of a page or half a page job description. And also then build in the career ladder. Research has shown that, yes, a lot of employers have caught on to the fact that younger folks or more entry-level roles, they really want to connect with the mission of the organization. And I think a lot of organizations are already trying to address that. But the second thing is people also want a job with a career advancement opportunity. And that is one of the biggest reasons they pick one employer over another. And if they can see that career advancement opportunity of just not in terms of pay, but also learning and developing themselves, you're going to have a better chance attracting folks for those positions.
Perfect, thanks, Atta. Here's another one that I'm sure everyone would like to know the answer to. This is from Veronica in the Philippines. How do we avoid candidates that turn down the offer last minute and you feel like their reason is not genuine? How could we win them back?
Yeah, I love the fact, first of all, that there are 2 questions from the Philippines. I'm a big fan of the Philippines. I've been there probably 20 times over the years or more, and absolutely love the country. Veronica, I'm not sure you want to win those people back, if I'm being honest. I think that if you're getting a lot of candidates who are rejecting your offers at the very end of the process, oftentimes that's indicative of something else going wrong in the beginning of your process. And what I mean by that is you probably could have screened out those candidates earlier on and saved both yourselves and the candidates some time. And what I believe is a little bit more genuine fit. You don't want to twist the candidate's arm to accept a job offer because they're not going to be super happy in the job, or you're not going to be super happy with them, and that friction is going to remain. And these are the people who are going to leave their job in a few months from now or a couple of years from now anyways. And that kind of like leaking bucket that I was talking about is going to continue. What you want to focus on more is finding people who are a better fit for the role and who want to stay in the role longer.
Yeah, good answer. Here's one for you, Mark. Can't have you nodding off. I noticed that Mark stated candidates are only opening their emails at a rate of 24 to 25%. However, I missed the percentage of people replying via SMS. Can you remind us, Mark?
Yeah, sure. So that's in the high 80s. That's 87, 88%. So yeah, just to follow on from that, you can send both emails and SMSs from the system, and when they reply, it'll alert you and it'll come back into the system as well. But a lot higher, yeah, definitely, if it's an immediate requirement.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks,
and for
Mark.
all the Americans on the line, SMS is text messaging.
Oh, sorry. That's funny. Okay, here's one for you, Atta. What tips might you have to make your job ads stand out from the competition?
Yeah, so like I was saying before, what you want to do is shorten the job ad as much as possible. And you do want to A/B test with various strategies. You want to see, okay, think about it this way. You only have this much real estate. And if it's one thing that marketers have learned over the years, it's that they don't want to kind of like clutter the marketing message. If you look at a billboard or you look at a old magazine advertising, you don't see thousands of words on there trying to kind of like capture attention. They've really reduced the key message to one point, and they use the messaging that they think is most effective, the one piece of messaging that they think is most effective. Now, you don't want to have a job ad with just a couple of words on it, but I think you can reduce the length quite a bit and think about the job ad as an advertisement. It's there to attract interest from candidates. You don't want to mislead anyone. You want to be genuine about what you're writing, but it's about kind of like getting candidates interested and in the door. And then you can have a longer laundry list of all the kind of like job responsibilities and things like that shared with the candidates as a later part of the process. But you don't want to clutter it too much.
Okay, that's a good answer. Here's one potentially for both of you. How do you build talent pools in a pool in a market with fewer applicants and more jobs?
Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, thanks, Atta. There's a number of ways. I suppose just focusing on what I mentioned before in terms of utilization of their database and the ability to engage with those. So some of the profiles in there might be from, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. So you want to get the most up-to-date resume possible. Perhaps more around kind of referrals, if we can kind of engage with our employees and see what other candidates they can refer to the business. Headhunting as well, how we can populate from, we use obviously Seek here, but LinkedIn, and there's a lot of other sources, the back end of Indeed and places like that, and the ability to get them in to the system. So there's kind of, I think I'm not missing out, referrals, talent pooling, headhunting, and utilization of the database. Yeah, I think that they'd be the kind of key area, unless Atta thinks of some other ones.
Yeah, I'll answer that question by using kind of like an example from our private life here in Los Angeles, where I live, and both my wife and I work. And when the pandemic hit here, we had a family friend who's an amazing dancer who couldn't perform because University of Southern California, where she works, was no longer offering her classes. And we asked her if she could help us with our 3 little kiddos at home, and she was wonderful. But then when the dance scene started again, she wanted to go back to work, understandably. So what we did is to post a job posting on a specific site for nannies to see if we could find someone who could help us again. And we got 2 applicants within a week. And I took a look at the job site and noticed that the job site would let you sort candidates by kind of like how close they live to you. And it would also allow you to ping them. So I had one of the recruiters at our firm actually ping a number of the folks who lived close to us, and within a day, we had dozens of applicants. So what I'm trying to say by that is just posting a job ad will not suffice. And it goes back to the title of the presentation today, that post and pray method. There are a lot of employers that I see that rely very heavily on job postings, but they're not doing active outreach. If you augment that job posting with a recruiter actually actively reaching out to candidates and engaging them, you'll get many more candidates.
Perfect, thank you. All right, one more. What's your opinion in relation to using hackathons to identify talent amongst students and potential candidates?
A hackathon?
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to my theory around skills-based assessments. If you can see them perform the skill that is required for the job, it's wonderful. Now, you have to understand that if you make the more tedious you make the application process for the candidates, there are folks who are not going to want to participate. So if you organize the hackathon and only one person shows up, it's probably not that attractive. So you have to balance that with, are you able to actually get people to show up to the event and perform that event? If you can do that, it's a great way of doing it.
Okay, perfect. A question for you, Mark. Someone's asking, is the LinkedIn integration up and running in JobAdder?
Yes, I think both the Seek and LinkedIn integration was completed about 2 months or so ago. So yes, there's a lot of live clients using both solutions.
Okay, perfect. We're getting to the end. If anyone's got any last minute questions, send them through. Oh, this is a long one. come back to that one. This one's for you, Atta. You say shorten the job advert. Is the About Us section, the company information, important in the advertisement, in your opinion, or would you drop it?
I would keep it, but make it short.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Another one for you, Mark. Is there a cost for SMS or texting candidates in JobAdder?
Yeah, so we have our own text messages within the system, but we have integrated partners that probably, to be honest, are more cost effective. So, I push them through to them.
Okay, oh, here's a good one. Okay, hello, joining from Sydney, Australia. What recommendations do you have to attract unskilled workers in a market that is flooded with thousands of jobs? We cannot compete on dollars and pay per award, which is low, and no room in margins to increase pay rates. Also, what suggestions do you have to retain unskilled workers who leave for opportunities in different industries offering more money for less work? Does that make sense, or do you want me to read it out again?
Yes, I was reading a research report yesterday on the effectiveness of pay increases for unskilled workers. And even a $1 increase in pay could have a pretty significant effect on both attracting and retaining talent at that level. And that might seem outrageous to an employer, but if you're thinking about it from the employee's perspective, if you're earning $10 an hour and someone else is offering you $11 or $12 an hour, that's a 10 to 20% increase. So it's quite substantial. And it's probably even a larger increase to your disposable income, because guess what? Your taxes and your rent and your gas bills are going to stay the same. So the amount of money that you can actually go out there and spend on discretionary spending increases tremendously. So I would take a look and go back to what I was saying in terms of understanding how much is this talent worth to us, and what are the things we could do to maybe be able to afford to pay our talent a little bit more. What would the talent have to do? Can we increase our productivity metrics somehow? If we're getting someone in a factory floor who's able to help us produce 11 gadgets a day instead of 9, can we afford to pay them more? And making salaries more attractive that way and making the job more attractive for your workers is something I do believe in. Now, beyond that, I would say that there are a number of things you could do. One of the biggest factors in kind of like tenure on the job that you could take as a proxy for job satisfaction, if you will, especially for unskilled workers, is geographic proximity to work. So I would say building up your local brand name in your community amongst the workforce that you want to cater to is one thing you could do to attract more folks at that level.
Yeah, that makes sense. Here's one from Karen, who's a recruiter in Sydney, an agency recruiter. She agrees with you, Atta, that time kills all deals. Do you have any tips on how to speed up the process when the client is taking their time with the process, with the recruitment process?
Absolutely. So begin the process with when you're kicking off a search, trying to understand how's the hiring process going to look like. And if the client does not want to agree at that point on if it's going to be 2 people who are going to interview the candidate that you presented to them, or it's going to be 12, you need to kind of like have that tough conversation with them at that point in the beginning of the search when they're still motivated to get going, and explain to them that you've seen this happen, especially in this job market, that if you're getting further along in the process and the candidate does not see the light at the end of the tunnel, they will accept other job offers that are in front of them. And you need to be able to explain to them how many interviews they need to expect. The other thing you could do is also trying to kind of like align interview calendars ahead of time, whether it's people freeing up times ahead of time on their calendars for getting interviews through the process, so that you're not juggling calendars when you're finding candidates, but the other way around, when you're speaking to the candidate saying like, okay, next Tuesday, our client's going to be available at 11 a.m. to speak with you. Does that work for you? You can become more proactive about it. And then the last thing is, even if it's in a Zoom setting, trying to arrange for interview super days. where instead of kind of like funneling candidates to one hiring manager at a time, saying, okay, let's block off a few hours on Friday for the candidate, and then we'll schedule 3 back-to-back interviews with the client so that can speed up the process.
Okay, thank you. Atta, here's another one for you. Among the topics you discussed today, what do you think should be the ultimate takeaway for participants of this webinar?
The ultimate takeaway is that you need to take a step back and really understand your current hiring process. Break it down into a few different stages of this funnel and try to understand where do you have the biggest leakage points and what are the low-hanging fruits in terms of improving those. Once you do that, you're creating a process for how to improve results going forward, and you're not just relying on one kind of like methodology and say like, okay, we've implemented this one thing and now it's going to be great for all times going forward.
Okay, perfect. Mark, here's one from you. Do you have any statistics on face-to-face interviews versus virtual interview outcomes?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't have any stats on it, but I would imagine it'd be similar to the stats that we would have from a sales perspective, that if you have the ability to interact face to face, the likelihood of conversion is a lot higher than virtually. So unfortunately, I don't have stats on that, but just probably the way that we look at it, you know, I suppose the candidate and client interaction from an interview perspective is very kind of similar to a sales interaction. So yeah, maybe Atta has something around that.
Yeah.
I do not have stats on that either, but I can imagine it's a similar reaction as you do. What I can say is that whenever candidates have been able to meet with our employers face to face, we've gotten the feedback that what was scheduled as a 30-minute interview or 60-minute interview went on for 2 to 3 hours. And for someone wanting to get a job, if you're looking at it from a candidate's perspective, that's wonderful because they're getting more information about this prospective new job. From an employer's perspective, that's also great. You're getting more information about the candidate, and you can also kind of like create that connection with them to convince them to take the job when and if you want to make them an offer.
Perfect. One for you, Mark. We've had a couple of questions on whether JobAdder is integrated with WhatsApp or Facebook.
So yeah, so with both is through an integrated partner called Roy AI, and I have to double check to see, because we integrate with over 100 vendors, so I know Roy AI does. I need to double check maybe if there might be potential other vendors that also do as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. All right, we're at past 10 o'clock now, so I'm going to finish up with one last question for Atta, and then we'll leave it there. Joining from Melbourne, Australia, I'm a real estate recruiter, and we are currently in a candidate shortage due to many factors, including regulation changes and average salaries. Now that we have seen a shift with virtual interviews, would you suggest to try and take advantage of targeting candidates in other states or even other countries?
Absolutely, yes. I think that it's a great idea if you can do that. Now, I would first of all take a look and see if there are any legal requirements on these agents in other states holding licenses in your state, etc. But if there are not, I would definitely do that.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to the end. I think we've covered off most of the questions. If there is any that we haven't, I'll contact you privately and go through those. In terms of the books, we've given away all of the books. You would have received, when you spoke to us through the question box, a link in the answer section. Please complete that form with your delivery details, and as I mentioned, those books will come directly to you from Amazon, and depending on where you are, it can take from 1 to 3 weeks for those to arrive. Thank you, Mark, for your time. Thank you so much, Atta, for joining us and sharing your expertise. The feedback we've been receiving is wonderful. Everyone's enjoyed it. And again, if you've enjoyed the session, please rate the session when you leave via the survey. And also, if you'd like more information about JobAdder or to see a demonstration, please tick the book a demo box and we'll be in touch with you later today. Thanks everyone for your time. Yes, we look forward to seeing you all at our next session. Bye everyone. Thanks again, Atta.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.